Nate, you good to go whenever? It's right at 5 o'clock. So I'd like to call this special Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Members present this evening are Council Members Gearbaugh, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, Mayor Morrow. From City Staff, we have our City Clerk, Clerk Royal. Is there a motion to approve the agenda at this time, either to approve it as submitted or amended?
Move as submitted.
Moved by Gearbaugh to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required, to state their name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? I would defer to the City Clerk. Were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time?
I did get one.
Okay, they will be limited to 3 minutes once you begin.
Dear Mayor and City Council, thank you for your continued service to our city and for the thoughtful approach you've taken in the city manager selection process. As you weigh this important decision, I want to express my firm belief that our next city manager must embody professionalism, integrity, and the ability to unify, not divide. A truly effective city manager serves as a stabilizing force who helps keep the council focused on what matters most, the good of the community. This role is not just administrative, it is deeply ethical, requiring someone who can foster collaboration and mutual respect, not manipulate relationships among city council members, businesses, and city staff for personal or financial gain. As a resident who has spent time reviewing the candidates, I know that someone with experience needs to be at the helm as we move forward. This moment demands proven leadership, not only to navigate the complexities ahead, but to rebuild public trust, restore unity, and uphold the values we cherish as a community. Ms. Cole has been praised by some for her visibility, responsiveness, and engagement with downtown businesses. Meanwhile, concerns from city staff and residents about her lack of prior city manager experience and her role in fostering division amongst council members cannot be dismissed. These issues speak directly to the leadership and unifying qualities this position requires. It is also worth noting that council not only approved the formation of a hiring committee, but also allocated public funds for a professional search firm to ensure a fair, transparent process. To now resist the outcome of that very process raises serious concerns, not only about transparency, but also about respect for the people this council itself and trust to identify the most qualified candidates. While individual council members may naturally have personal preferences, they were elected to represent the interests of the community as a whole, not to advance personal relationships or loyalties at the expense of residents' trust and well-being. It has been disheartening to watch the local press amplify division between council members, when what Saline truly needs is cooperation, not conflict. This is precisely the kind of situation where a seasoned city manager with the skills to foster collaboration and restore professional decorum could have played a stabilizing role. Moreover, with so much at stake in terms of the stability and direction of our city, we must ask, do we really want to risk placing the future of Saline in the hands of someone without the experience this role demands? The city manager's office isn't a place for on-the-job training. It requires someone with proven ability to manage complex operations, navigate competing priorities, and lead with clarity under pressure. This is why the job description states 7 to 10 years of previous experience. Fortunately, the council has before it highly qualified finalist Dan Swallow, city manager of Tecumseh for the past 10 years. Brings over 2 decades of public service experience with a strong background.
And have to end it there. You can email the totality of that email or letter to council. Was there a name?
No.
No, okay. All right, then we're going to proceed to new business. We come now to city manager interviews. I believe our consultant, Nate Genzer, would like to make a few comments before we invite our first candidate in.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council.
Pull that a little bit closer to you, Nate.
That's what I thought. Every microphone is different. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy to be here to support your conversation this evening. My name is Nate Geinzer. I'm the CEO of Double Hall Solutions. We were, as you all know, acquired to help support this process. I'm not going to rehash all the steps that you've been through to get to this point tonight, but tonight you have a second round interview with 3 candidates. What's going to be most important here is that the council finds a path to move forward together so we can get this relationship off to a good start. As I've mentioned before, this whole process that we go through sets the whole tone. And so tonight, there's a few pieces to the process that I know we want to talk through. First and foremost is the interviews. We have 55 minutes slated, but we've got 14 questions. In conversations, what our plan is tonight is to give candidates 3 minutes for each question. So we're not going to be timing the actual 55 minutes. We're just going to track the 3 per 14 questions. We do have the indication cards here that we'll use for council and the candidates to try to stay on track. We've got a halfway point, 30 seconds to start bringing it to a close, and then 0 is time to wrap it up. Before I move on, are there any specific questions about the interview process itself?
Any questions from the dais? There appear to be none.
So the only thing I would just remind you is the same stuff the first time you went around. There are questions you cannot ask, protected classes, age, sex, race, family status, all of that. I think you guys have been through that training already. The only other thing I would recommend, with us being trying to stick to this 3 minutes per question, I'd recommend that we don't do follow-ups, but that's your prerogative. I would just say it's important, if there are follow-ups, they need to be consistent with the question that is asked, and I would say to focus on things for clarifying an answer or something along those lines. Don't take it in a different direction. After tonight's meeting, I believe it's City Council's intent to deliberate on a selection of a city manager. I can be as active or inactive in that process as you like. Typically, I'm kind of the silent person that'll just kind of help you out as needed. But what I would suggest to you all is I've seen councils do this really, really well. I've seen councils not do this very well. It's very critical, regardless who you pick, that the deliberation process is done in a professional manner, focusing primarily on merits. This is where candidates can pick up scars that don't go away. Unfortunately, sound bites get picked up. They go to another position they didn't happen to have a chance here. Now it hurts them later down the road. So we really try to focus and emphasize sticking to the positive as we go through that deliberation process. How you want to kick off that process is completely up to the council. A lot of times you'll see a temperature check taken, or you'll kind of know when you read the room kind of where everybody's at. So I'll be ready to adjust as you might like to see. The last thing I would just note is if there is a motion to select a candidate, typically that's going to be done pending the final background check and the conditions of an offer being reached. Again, I've seen this done in different ways. Every community that I've worked in, it's all been different. I've been the lead on negotiation, playing completely in between. I've worked with elected officials. I've been totally excluded from the process. So again, that's going to be your prerogative, but that is something we have signed up to support you on if you desire. I think that's about it. Is there any other questions that you might have before we get rolling here?
Are there any questions from the dais? No? Let me confirm a few things with my 6 colleagues. Does everybody have at least 3 copies of the proposed questions? And you see that each question has been assigned. I think April, Nate did their very best to assign you the question that you asked. I do have to say, in complete candor, this is an excellent array of questions, a nice, eclectic, diverse mix. And we appreciate everyone's flexibility because there were some overlapping questions and some had to be reduced slightly in scope to account for our time limitation this evening. We will explain some preliminaries to each of the candidates when they're invited in, and unless there's anything from the dais, we will, Councilmember Harmount?
I just wanted to confirm that I will be asking the follow-up question for my first question that's as it's printed.
Okay, just please be mindful of the time because we do want to try to keep it to an hour. Please. Mr. Swallow, good evening. Why don't you set your cup and binder down, and why don't we shake your hand? We want to welcome you back to the city of Saline. We appreciate your patience and flexibility.
Thanks for coming.
Hi, nice to see you again.
See you again. Hi again. See you again.
See you again.
Evening.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Evening. Thank you for the afternoon. And there, evening.
Evening, sir.
See ya.
Mr. Swallows, please take a seat. There is more water there if you require it. Of course, make sure the green light is illuminated at the base of that microphone once we get started. I want to, of course, welcome you back once again. We're grateful to have you with us today as a finalist for the city manager position for the city of Saline. Your continued interest in serving our community is truly appreciated. At this second and final round of interviews, our goal is to deepen the conversation around your experience, leadership style, and vision for our community. We hope to have a better understanding of how you would approach your responsibilities for this role, work with council and staff, and help guide our community forward. We have 14 questions that my colleagues and I have submitted to work through over the next 55 minutes to 60 minutes. We ask that you be succinct, but also exercise some brevity. And we ask you, of course, to use what time you have wisely. Today's discussion is also a critical step as we move forward towards a final decision. At the conclusion of the process, we anticipate being able to develop consensus and perhaps even a conditional offer to a candidate we believe is best aligned with the needs and goals of the city of Saline. Thank you again for your time and commitment. And let's begin. I'm going to let Nate go over just a few preliminaries, Dan, before we kick off the first question.
So, Mr. Swallow, just to try to help keep everything on track, we'll give you a hey, we're halfway there. 30 seconds, time to bring it to a close. And what? It's time to wrap up.
Per question or?
That's per question.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any questions for us before we begin?
I don't believe so.
Very good. Then our first question is, we will begin, with Councilmember Lesh.
All right, first question is, how do you keep yourself and your team accountable to meet deadlines and meet goal expectations?
Sure. Obviously, as a city manager, ultimately the quote-unquote buck stops here relative to city business. So that is a critical role in working with department heads, as well as even on occasion, frontline staff, and as well as keeping council informed. So first, start off with just regular meetings with the department heads. Typically, it's a bi-weekly program with each department head, and we obviously, our first order of business is to go over current projects and what the status of those projects are, any difficulties they're encountering. One of my phrases is, my job is to make your job easier, and so, what difficulties you're encountering, what hurdles you're encountering, we need to, what can I do as a manager to maybe alleviate those. So that's first and foremost of those formal bi-weekly meetings. There's also a lot of informal communication, just literally walking around the halls of City Hall. I also like to visit each department on a regular basis, so go down to the wastewater plant, go down to DPW, and you pick up some information in those visits, as well as to maybe a difficulty that they're having or a challenge. Again, maybe staff expresses something to you at that point as well. So that's a kind of more informal way of just in day-to-day activities. Also, just literally driving around the community and checking out projects. So certainly take a look at those and verify that those are on track. So. Obviously, there are occasions where, staff is not keeping up or a project is behind. And so, in addition to where can I help you, there's also a little bit of pressure. Okay, remember the deadline. Here's the timeline. Are we there, or are we going to encounter challenges that way? So those are just a few examples of how, I help to ensure accountability. And again, really translates back. I talked about a lot, the first time interview is communication and regular communication.
Thank you, Mr. Lesh. We're going to transition to Councilmember Harmount.
Okay, Mr. Swallow, please share you deployed, and 2, the outcomes realized.
Sure. A particular occasion comes to mind. We had a facility in the city of Tecumseh. It was actually previously owned by the hospital that was vacating the property. And a nonprofit came forward and wanted to establish a homeless shelter for women and children. So it became a question, typically you don't, in your zoning ordinance, you don't have homeless shelter necessarily listed as a use. And so how do you manage that? Really, we're worried a little bit about the not in my backyard or the NIMBY response from the community potentially for use like that. So it was a contentious issue that came forward. Council certainly had an idea of what it was involved, but had a lot of questions as well. This was again a former hospital site, so there's a question: what happens with the rest of the property if you carve off this little piece? So there are a lot of challenges in that. The zoning piece was probably the biggest one because it had to come before council for determination of similar use. Basically, what zoning ordinance does it fit in this particular district? Does it make sense here? What are some of the concerns that may come forward? So. My recommendation was actually to approve the determination of similar use. Council actually voted contrary to my recommendation. So it actually became then, interestingly enough, it was not the NIMBY response, it was the support from the community that came forward and said, no, this use is a use we want to see in our community. It fits a need. So how do we address this? And ultimately, a lot of communications with the community, people coming forward at council meetings, expressing obviously their concern, support, disagreement, and just managing that to make sure, and working with council, particularly the mayor, to make sure the meetings were civil and organized, and what questions do we anticipate, how can we address that, trying to brief council on a regular basis on these are some of the issues that I've heard in the community, this is what you need to be aware of that's coming up. Ultimately, they actually ended up reversing their decision and approving the facility, but that was not without some obviously consternation, and so. Good result, really positive response from the community once the facility got up and running. We did address some of the concerns relative with ProMedica was the large hospital group that was leaving some of the other site uses during that time that was under debate. We did address, some of the concerns for those neighbors that were immediately safety concerns, those types of things, working with the nonprofit to make sure that those safety concerns were addressed from the neighbors. So ultimately a good result, but not without its controversy. And throughout that, obviously, as a manager, I wanted to support council in their decision, but also advise them on proper zoning protocols, making sure they understood why my recommendation was to approve the use, as well as, again, trying to address with council some of those concerns that came forward.
Thank you. As a follow-up question, building on your prior response with the context that led to the decision and heightened public scrutiny, how did you ensure transparency and accountability throughout the implementation of the decision you described?
Sure. So obviously, I like to include a lot of detail in my agenda packets, agenda review forms with City Council. That's also public facing. So, for example, with all the zoning criteria, went through very methodically and make sure that the community as well as council understood, what the regulatory scheme was as far as what they can or could not approve for that particular use. I'm trying to think of the. Back to your question in terms of how it was administered, certainly once council made a decision, certainly had to respect that. Council is the policy-making body, even though it was contrary to my recommendation. So advising them of some of the concerns I had of them potentially voting against my recommendation, and I believe that ultimately is what made council more comfortable and the community more comfortable to then implement the approval. And it turned out there were literally no problems, at the facility. It was not an issue, and the nonprofit did a very good job of managing the facility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Councilmember Lesh and then Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
All right, take a drink of water. Describe your leadership style and how do you adapt it when working with different personalities?
Sure. Again, relative to staff, my leadership style is really a support role and how I can, and particularly department heads, how can I make your job easier? So always want them to feel comfortable coming to me with questions, concerns. I also want staff and as well as community for that matter to feel comfortable coming with me ideas that they may have for maybe changing a process or a procedure. So, the common term I think is open door policy. Certainly respect that, and unless I'm in a call or a conference or something like that, my door is open for people to come in. So, also one of the I think key leaderships is again in that support role. It's okay to make small mistakes. We all make mistakes, and not not chastising someone overly for making a small mistake and say, okay, how do we fix it? Really trying to be more solutions oriented in terms of when a project comes forward or when an idea comes forward, and trying to get to yes. It's not always a yes. There may be other constraints of that, but so I do believe I do a good job of making sure that staff feels supported. B, trying to provide the level of detail and technical information to make sure that people can make the correct decisions, not chastising people when they make a small mistake. Obviously, we try and avoid the big mistakes is the key there. So it kind of explains a little bit of my leadership style again. I also like to get to know staff as best I can, so to have that familiarity so they do feel more comfortable with me as the manager. I'm not, the big bad person in the corner office. That I know their names, I know their families, I know their passions, I know their hobbies, and that also makes I think leadership a lot easier when we know the people you're working with and know their strengths that way too, of some of their not only technical strengths but personal strengths and weaknesses, things that they struggle with. So I know my DPW director hates writing agenda review forms for council, so I often help him with that. And hopefully someday he'll feel more comfortable doing that task. So that's just one small example.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. How do you handle employee performance issues, including support, improvement plans, or termination when needed? Please give an example.
Sure. I always like to say, we don't fire people, they fire themselves, ultimately. So it really is, in terms of performance issues, I think it's key to follow a policy and procedure in terms of, if there's an issue with an employee, making sure that you document that concern, that you address it with them early, whether either directly and or through the department head. If there is progressive discipline involved, that you implement that and don't wait until there's a real problem or a more serious problem. So try and address issues early if you can. Obviously, sometimes that doesn't always work out. That there is a major issue that comes up that does require more serious either addressing that or discipline. So one of the things I'm a big believer in is when you have a employee that's struggling or a problem employee, writing out and identifying those issues in fair amount of detail in kind of a performance review, even if it's not, doesn't have to be an annual performance review. If there's somebody struggling, you need to address it sooner rather than later. So, for example, had an employee that just was not prioritizing their time properly. They were doing what I'll call minor tasks and ignoring some of their more urgent and or more important job tasks. Don't necessarily want to identify the department or the employee just for that reason. But so have a very detailed memo to him saying these are the performance issues, these are the concerns I have. Now I want to meet with you, on a regular basis, whether that be every other week, every month, and we're going to go through these and we're going to talk about them and see if you've addressed them or not. Sometimes that doesn't work, and maybe there's continuing performance issues or something of that nature. So I'm a believer in, what's commonly referred to as last chance agreement, with employees, identify the issues, hopefully they, concur with that to a certain extent, and here's your deadline to correct them. If you don't, there's going to be either very serious disciplinary action or termination. There's rare occasions where termination probably is in order, and we start down that path, almost immediately. Those are very, very rare, thankfully, but that's something you need to address. It's usually at that point involves, probably the city employment attorney, probably counsel to a certain extent, to say, hey, we've got an issue, a very serious issue here. It looks like it could be a termination issue, and often. In my experience, once you present that employee with the seriousness of it, they may volunteer a resignation versus a termination. And so that's, I think, the best way to outcome in those more serious cases. But one time in my career, I actually did have to terminate an employee.
Thank you very much.
We're going to transition Mr. Swallow to Councilmember Rice.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. How do you assess department heads and key staff to understand their strengths and areas for improvement, and how do you help them grow in their roles?
Sure. With that, obviously, we already talked a little bit about my regular meetings with department heads where I'm trying to assess, where they're performing well, maybe where there's some struggle points, things of that nature. So, often, again, I try to be in that support role of, you're not achieving, this goal, this project's behind, what is the issue? Is there something that we can work on together to resolve that? So that's probably the most common method that I utilize with that. And then there's the more, general, regular interaction with, okay, you need some technical training in whether it be, an IT area that you're struggling with, that, we've asked you to implement, this new software package and that deals with whatever the case may be, work orders, whatever the case may be, and you're not doing that. Is there a technical gap there in providing that training? I often find that, staff is encouraged when you offer up training in terms of they feel that is kind of a perk. And so try and make sure that there's budget for that in each of the departments so that they can either as a department head send themselves to a conference or a training to learn more, or send their staff to a conference or training to learn more. So, I always find, and I encourage particularly my department heads, I always go to at least 1 or 2 conferences a year. It's nice just to get out of the office to learn from your fellow employees, public sector employees that are struggling maybe with some of the same issues, and you can learn from them or get ideas from other communities on how to solve the problem. So often encourage at least, my department heads and often even, some of the frontline staff, you need to look into this particular program. I'll forward them particular trainings when I know that there's a weakness in a certain area. And I said, hey, this would be a great training, you might want to consider. I did that recently. Our economic development director, I think she, as a woman, feels a little out of place sometimes in that field. And so I said, here's a program the MIDA, the Michigan Economic Developers Association, is offering that specifically deals with women in economic development. I think you need to attend that. I think it'd be a great opportunity for you. So try and offer those opportunities as well. That covers most of it, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. We're going to transition to Councilmember Seal.
Mr. Swallow, can you share a specific example from your experience that demonstrates how you build partnerships, engage diverse stakeholders, and involve the community in setting priorities and making key decisions for the greater good?
Pretty broad-based. Well, I talked about partnerships and collaboration first. And so maybe I'll start there with an example. One area that has been extremely successful recently for us is, and it may seem like a smaller item, but is important in building partnerships with our surrounding communities, is our Kiwanis Regional Trail Authority. This is an authority between City of Tecumseh, City of Adrian Township, and Raisin Township. And so we came together, wanting to build our non-motorized network around Lenawee County. Specifically, amongst those 4 communities are the largest communities in Lenawee County. So interestingly enough, I'm sure there's some rivalries around here too. There's not always been the best relationship between Adrian and Tecumseh. They used to have brawls after the high school football game. So building that relationship was very important. And this is just one small example where we really came together to build that relationship and deliver that. So one of our key projects that we recently accomplished was what we call the Tecumseh Connection. There was a mile gap in the trail before it reached the city of Tecumseh. And so that was something that, certainly benefited ourselves and Raisin Township more so maybe than our other partners. About bringing those together, there was a massive fundraising effort. We raised just about $500,000 to go forward that, applied for a Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant to help offset the additional costs. And, we joked, but it was partly true. Not only did we connect the communities physically, we connected communities, more together as a spirit of cooperation in accomplishing that project. And I think it's helped build on other projects that we're now working on with particularly the city of Adrian. It helped open up that door and more cooperation with that community. And the brawls after the football game do no longer occur.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rice?
So within the building, what kind of organizational culture do you try to create and maintain? And how do you ensure that your team fosters a positive and inclusive work environment?
So I guess one of our goals is, we want to be an employer of choice in the community. And actually, just a fairly recent hire, an account clerk in our treasurer's department said, I always wanted to work for the city of Tecumseh. And now I get to. So I think that's first and foremost is to, not only internally, but externally, show that, it's a good place to work, that people are friendly, that we cooperate, we support each other. If there's negativity out there, we try and dispel the negativity. We don't blame another department for, yes, I'm sorry, your street didn't get plowed, at the same time, no, DPW was, they're hardworking, they have a small crew, they'll get there as soon as they can. So create that supportive environment. And, it takes time. It takes, I think, a lot of effort. I think the key is, first and foremost, looking for those traits when you hire an individual, and then supporting that throughout their tenure, throughout their career, and really just trying to make sure that lead by example to a certain extent too. That I'm supporting the department heads, I'm supporting staff, and you should do the same for your fellow workers. And I don't know if that answers most of your question.
Thanks.
Now to Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Thank you. Are there situations where you believe a city manager or a department head should speak publicly on an issue without direct approval from council? For example, involving a developer, community group, or infrastructure project? If so, when and why?
So certainly communications should always be coordinated, whether, and that when I say coordinated, that, as all the groups or departments involved are aware of the situation, aware of maybe the particular issue, and that there's at least a joint decision that, who should be the lead on this particular communication. So, in Tecumseh, we have a written communications policy that basically outlines, how, if you're going to do a press release as, let's say the Department of Public Works about a bridge closing, how is that supposed to work? So usually it starts with the department head in terms of drafting the communication, and then it flows to, in our case, our gate, keeper, so to speak, is our economic development director, because she has a lot of experience in, public communications, marketing, understanding, what response may be, and then obviously would flow to me as the city manager. I have a certain window of time, either approve or disapprove, or it's going out. So that's but everybody kind of understands the flow of how that communication should happen, and we try to stick to that as much as possible. Obviously, there are certain exceptions. Communications, emergencies, public safety emergencies, the police department may have to issue, a press release or a warning or whatever the case may be immediately without going through the normal channels. So understanding those exceptions, and, in that case, absolutely, the police chief should be speaking, first probably in that particular case, or the fire chief if it's an emergency services issue. So with that, there are definitely exceptions to the rule, so to speak, in communications, but hopefully it's mostly coordinated. Obviously, one of the things I try to do, although obviously there's 7 people to communicate with on council, is let council know also, because they're going to hear it from their neighbors. Well, what's happening, down the street, or what's happening over in this particular issue. So I take it upon myself as kind of my role, as a primary role, is try and communicate that out to city council, give them at least a heads up so they're not taken aback by getting stopped at the grocery store and, not having some information, at least enough information to answer a question or tell the individual, how it may be addressed. So I think that covers most of your question.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mr. Gearbaugh has the next question as well, Mr. Swallow.
As you step into our city manager role, or if you do, how will you ensure that any ongoing investigations or studies nearing completion are reviewed and acted upon appropriately?
So certainly starting any new organization is, the quote, drinking through a fire hose. So there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of projects, coming at the new city manager in a rapid succession. So, unfortunately or fortunately, in the beginning, probably going to have to give the department heads a little bit more lead, so to speak, or lead role in some of these projects, and encourage them. I understand that I may not have all of your answers. Please don't let the project fall behind. I'll catch up. I'll help you out where I can, but. I think giving the department heads a little bit more authority, a little bit more lead in the beginning is important, and learning, obviously, making sure that I'm learning as much as I can, as fast as I can, so I can support that particular project when I'm up to speed, so to speak. So with that, I also, as the manager, whether I like it or not, even I don't know all the details, I still have certain fiscal and management responsibilities to make sure that there aren't problems, so to speak, with the project or with the particular initiative. So I definitely have to at least have enough knowledge of the projects and try and get up to speed quickly on those to satisfy my fiscal responsibility that A, there's resources, money to make sure that the project is properly funded, B, that there aren't any legal or other, I guess, more significant concerns with the project, that would warrant me diving deeper in on a particular issue. So hope that answers your question.
I have the next two, Mr. Swallow. The first is, how do you approach conflict resolution, and how do you work to de-escalate situations professionally without adding tension or distractions?
So, the golden rule with conflict resolution is listen first. And so always, trying to, listen to both sides of a particular conflict. I'll give you an example this morning. A gentleman came in, he was extremely upset that, code enforcement, had written him up for, a particular issue that, shouldn't have, that he doesn't like the code enforcement officer. The stuff he has in his yard is not junk, it's, equipment. So he was extremely upset and ready to basically take my head off. So he wanted to see the city manager. He'd reached that point, so so first of all, I listened. I said, okay, well, what's your address? I don't know much about your information. What's your address? How has this progressed? Where are we at? Have you talked to the code enforcement officer? No, I haven't. Okay. Have you talked to his manager, the building official? No, I haven't. So, okay, well, those are certainly opportunities for you to potentially resolve this particular issue. You need to take advantage of those the best you can. And, if not, here's my number. You can call me back. So that's just one small example, but I think listen first. Obviously, if that's not, satisfying them, then try and do present some of the facts surrounding it, and some people respond to facts, and so in this case I said, well, just because it's in your backyard, it's still blight. It's not, just because you moved it out of your front yard and put it in your backyard, it's still blight. So trying to present the facts and, to the individual, and, make sure they understood the facts surrounding it, why the city was, taking action, why we're at the point we are. And so trying to address that. And then also just, I guess part of that process, again, kind of a different phrase, but try and put yourself in that individual's shoes as well, and try and understand their aspects a little bit as they're explaining, if they're not responding, to what you presented thus far. So listen, certainly try and address the factuals, things surrounding the issue. Try to place yourself in their shoes if you can, to try and understand their perspective, and ultimately try and present a solution that hopefully resolves the issue. I'll just jump back to the case I was talking about. I said, okay, listen, our code enforcement, if you've made progress, always offers extensions on, getting the work done. So that might be a possibility for you. I said, if you have particular pieces of equipment that you think are not junk, identify those, and maybe we can address that, because you are allowed to store some things in your backyard. So he seemed satisfied with that, and I gave him my card as well as the building official's card if they needed follow-up.
Thank you. What is your experience with municipal economic development, and what do you see as Saline's top needs for attracting and keeping businesses, and how would you utilize your skills to support growth?
Sure. Obviously, I grew up, so to speak, in my career, both in planning and economic development was a significant role, both in the city of Monroe as well as Van Buren Township. Prior to that, that was my primary role. So I have quite a bit of experience in two very different communities. And so I think it brings to the table some good insight that I think I can help Saline with. So particularly you asked about businesses, I'm assuming small businesses, things of that nature that you have particular concern with. First and foremost, I think make sure we have a network for them to communicate with the city. In the city of Tecumseh, we have very strong DDA, which consists of a lot of small business owners. We have very strong Central Business Association. It also includes other businesses in the area. So making sure that we're hearing their needs in terms of what would make a difference in your business to make it successful. So I think it's key also to have strategic staff in place. I know some of your goals and the strategic plan looked at, should we have an economic development department specifically? That's something that, for example, the city of Tecumseh has taken very seriously. One of the reasons being, we're in a case similar to many small communities where the large industrial suppliers are not necessarily supporting the community as much as or industrial businesses are not supporting the community as much as they might, and so, or have historically. So how can we address, more diversification in our business and addressing those small business needs as well? So I think having some staff support. In the city of Tecumseh, we have an economic development director, we have a marketing manager that works on marketing the community, and also my admin serves as staff support for them. So we have a good team to address those concerns. I think that is important. So a few things we do consistently and that I would apply, I think, also to Saline is, how do you bring people to the community, put basically those people in front of those businesses' doors. Once you get them in front of their doors, then it's up to them to market and figure out how to make a sale or whatever the case may be. So have a regular program schedule of events, of attractions, of it doesn't have to be the city. You can partner with partner obviously Main Street or other organizations. Partner with them, but have a regular series of events to bring people to town to help support those small businesses, shop in those small businesses. Also, the other thing, obviously, many of the small businesses work in the business, not on the business. And so providing them training opportunities. Recently, we had a series coordinated actually through Launch Lenaway, which is an organization actually out of Adrian, put on a series of technical programs for those small business owners, whether there's a legal one, there's an IT one, there's a communications one, there's a marketing program. So try and bring some of those resources to those businesses so they don't have the time often to reach out and figure it out on their own, bringing those resources to them as much as possible. I think that would be very applicable in Saline as well.
Thank you. We're going to transition back to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. Recognizing how critical the first 90 days are in setting the tone for leadership and building momentum, what specific goals or actions do you believe are most important to accomplish early on to ensure a strong and successful start as city manager?
I think I actually have a slight preview when we met earlier, so appreciate the question. So as I mentioned earlier, the first 90 days is a lot of learning. And so one of the things I did in Tecumseh and I think would work well here is I actually did a little SWOT analysis. And we're all familiar with that, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I actually went through that not only with each council member, but also each department head, and kind of identified, some of the obviously those key points. What do you think are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And that was a great, I think, structure to try and get the information that I needed, at least the preliminary information for what are the priorities of the individual council members? What are the priorities of the council as a whole? What are the priorities of department heads? What are the priorities of the departments or the staff as a whole? So I think that was very valuable. I'd like to use that again if offered this position. That would be one of the opportunities. And then it is two other things. One, learning as much as I can. A lot of reading, a lot of probably late evenings. Reading through projects, reading through collective bargaining agreements, reading through the budget, reading through all those key documents that are supporting the strategic plan. Obviously, being one of the outlines that would help steer me towards some of those other documents, those plan actions. Reading the master plan. Those are a lot of the learning items that would have to occur in the first 90 days. And then secondarily, starting to get to know staff and letting them start to get to know me, and how I interact with people, how I see them wanting to interact with individuals. And so there's a lot of literally just probably, as I mentioned earlier, visiting all the departments and letting them put a face to a name, and letting them ask me questions as well. So that would be probably the primary areas I would focus on in my first 90 days. And then was there follow-up kind of to that?
No, it was just sort of actions do you believe are most important to accomplish early on to ensure a strong and successful start as city manager? I think you kind of answered that. Thank you.
Back to Councilmember Seal.
When you consider the priorities and focus areas outlined in our current strategic plan, which specific goals do you feel your background and experience best position you to support completion?
Sure. Took a lot of notes. But probably, based on my planning background and my economic development background, I would say the purposeful planning and smart growth is an area where I probably have the most expertise to bring to the table. So that's probably an area where I'm most comfortable and could hit the ground running with the Saline. I noticed in the strategic plan that is kind of ties into some other components of it as well. Obviously, the fiscal stability, things of that nature. Obviously, somewhat dependent on continued growth in the tax base. So a lot of different areas, also mentioned the plan, talked about specific areas in the community that may have been a particular challenge or a particular interest to try and see redevelopment. So within that, one thing that I worked on at Tecumseh I think would be successful here, as we did a lot of sub-area plans where we took a particular look at a particular, it could be as small as a 4-block area, so to speak, in the community where, whatever reason, we felt there was a huge potential for redevelopment, whether there was, a challenge or an issue that we're dealing with. And so we did a lot of sub-area planning. It helps you focus on that particular issue, bring some expertise to the table through the planning consultants or other, sources. So I think that would be something that I'd look at. Again, that idea between planning and smart growth. Again, I believe taking a close look at the zoning ordinance to make sure that we have addressed. I heard some communication about in watching some of your meetings where you've already addressed things like accessory dwelling units and some things to try and promote housing, for example. So I think that's an area where it could help as well with reviewing the zoning ordinance, making sure processes are streamlined. One of the time is money is a phrase you hear a lot, particularly in the development world. Making sure that our processes are streamlined as much as possible. One program City of Tecumseh we went through I think would be helpful here is redevelopment ready communities, RRC. I don't know if you've engaged in that and or already certified, but I think that was a useful tool, and so I can bring additional information to that or a different expertise to that process as well. So those are a few areas or an area particularly that I think I'm most well suited. On the economic development side, certainly well versed in all of the potential incentives that may want to be offered by the community. Particularly housing these days is tough without some sort of support from the community, whether that be through a grant through MISTA or another powerful tool that we're looking at in Tecumseh is the housing TIF, or tax increment financing program. Allows you to collect TIF dollars, or you're familiar with TIF, but on a particular housing project. So not only do you get the local tax dollars, but you also get to utilize potentially the other taxing jurisdictions, in particular, even apply to MISTA to utilize school taxes. So you get to share in some of the other tax revenue to help support a project. It's not just the city supporting the project. So those are a few examples in that area that I think could help.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Councilmember Harmount.
Yes. What unique strengths would you bring to this role that might not currently exist? Why will it be transformative for Saline?
So we talked about this a fair amount during my first interview. Is when I looked at the profile that the city of Saline put out, I feel like some of my skill sets align well with those particular areas where you see challenges today, and frankly, many other communities, but where particularly the city of Saline sees challenges. So we talked a little about things like the dam project. So one of my backgrounds, as you may have noted in my resume, was environmental consulting. So I've worked with the regulatory agencies like Eagle and dealt with those types of projects actually. So my grad work that I started out was on freshwater ecology. So I understand, what happens when you remove a dam or, don't remove a dam. So that's some, strengths. We talked about a little bit already about planning and economic development. That's an area where I have a lot of experience, and so I do see that background being helpful, whether it be taking a look at, again, zoning ordinance provisions, what offers, what sites should be priority areas, doing sub-area plans, what incentives might we want to look at to help promote that. So kind of that economic development front is an area I think I could help. I've talked about major infrastructure projects that the city of Saline has taken on and is facing right now. So not only, for example, in my environmental consulting career, those are major pipeline projects, major highway projects, so I'm familiar with that. But also I've taken on, in my city management role, a lot of what's required to get a project from the planning stages, from an asset management point to fruition, and developing the engineering plans, developing the financing plan, bonding, or those types of things. So I have some strengths there in addressing some of those issues that the city of Saline is currently facing. I'm trying to think of some of the other things, but when I looked at it and looked at the profile and I aligned, what I've done in my career, I felt like that aligned well with some of the challenges you're facing, and I think I could be a significant resource in those areas, and happy to expand on any other areas.
Thank you for your answer.
Absolutely.
Mr. Swallows, are there any specific questions you have for us at this time?
This is it?
This is it.
Okay.
We covered a lot of ground in just about an hour, and we appreciate your thoughtful and in-depth answers. Thank you. This does officially conclude our interview. The goal is to discuss these interviews following the completion of the third later this evening and seeing if we're able to develop consensus, and if we are, we will be in touch with you very soon.
Right. So I did have, if I make just a short statement.
Oh, absolutely.
So I chose Saline as my home well before this opportunity ever presented itself. We looked at homes in Pittsfield, Saline Township, York, but we chose Saline. The reason for this are many. I'd like to share just a few of them with you, and I think it relates to why I applied for this position. So certainly, I believe in the city form of government. Worked for a township, now worked for two cities. So I believe in providing that full suite of services, and I believe in this, that's provided in the city form of government. I was attracted to Saline's historic neighborhoods and ended up purchasing a home there. Enjoy your traditional downtown and spent a lot of time there. So, I chose Saline for my home, and I look forward to the opportunity potentially that may also be able to serve them serve the city as the city manager.
Thank you, sir. We very much appreciate your time this evening. Hope you stay cool and have a wonderful night.
I'm glad I went first.
Yeah.
So,
Appreciate that. Open the door, maybe that might.
We need some air in here, please.
No air movement at the moment. I feel like I'm suffocating.
I think everybody's seeing it.
Slow moving something to move the air.
Oh, there's one in the closet, I think. She needs to be
Yeah. She's just gonna bring him right in.
Lights on. Mics are on, just FYI, everyone.
You buy one Jeep.
we are very grateful to have you with us as a finalist for the city manager position in the city of Saline. Your continued interest in serving our community is truly appreciated. At this second and final round of interviews, our goal is to deepen our conversation around your experience, leadership style, and vision for Saline. We hope to better understand how you would approach the responsibilities of this role, work with council and staff, and help guide our community forward. We have 14 questions that have been prepared by my colleagues and I to work through over the next 55 to 60 minutes, and we ask you to use your time wisely, of course. Today's discussion is also a critical step as we move forward towards a final decision. At the conclusion of the process, we anticipate being in a position to hopefully extend a conditional offer to a candidate we believe best aligns with our needs and goals. Thank you again for your time and commitment to public service. And before we begin, I'm going to have Nate go over just a few other preliminaries regarding time management, because we do want to keep it to roughly an hour.
Sounds good. Jason, good to see you. I'm going to give you, for each question, I'm going to give you a green for halfway through.
Okay.
We'll give you a 30-second warning.
Okay.
Time to wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
All good? All right.
It's like being back in TV.
Yeah.
The broadcast background, gotcha.
We're so happy to have you with us. And we're going to begin tonight, Mr. Smith, with Councilmember Lesh.
How do you keep yourself and your team accountable to meet deadlines and meet goal expectations?
So we currently in Belleville, we meet weekly, every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. We sit down, we go over where everybody's at, what everybody needs. We all wear a lot of hats, so it's pretty natural for us to kind of pull responsibilities from one or the other based on how we're, what our workload looks like. As far as accountability goes, I meet regularly with staff to check in when we're getting close to deadlines. Do you need anything? Is there anything that's missing? If we're waiting on something from someone, is there a phone call that I need to make? For example, we have a couple different road projects we're waiting on bid specs for, and there's a lot of irons in the fire. So I'll reach out to the engineering firm and be, for lack of a better term, brutally honest and just say, do you need me to farm this out to somebody else? Because I'm happy to do that. I just need to know, because I need this by X day. And if that day doesn't come, more or less, it's okay. I'm farming it out. I don't have a choice. It's clear we're not going to make that deadline. So, making sure that everybody has the tools they need to be successful, understanding the hard deadlines and some of the deadlines that are a little softer, and then managing expectations for staff and our contracted services, that they know what's expected of them, when it's expected of them, and what happens when we move on from there when we don't meet that target.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Harmount.
Mr. Smith, please share a specific example where you had to support your elected body and community through a complex and unpopular but necessary conversation and decision. When answering this question, please be sure to discuss 1, the strategies you deployed, and 2, the outcomes realized. There'll be a follow-up question.
Sure. The first one that comes to mind was during my time in Litchfield, we had to demolish the pool, which is never a popular decision to make. Unfortunately, the pool was just beyond the scope of our ability and financially to repair. So the pool was demolished, the hole was filled in, and then became the hard conversation of what to do next. We kind of game planned a few different things. We talked to people in the public. We looked at our park plan. We looked at the master plan. And we essentially decided that the best way to repurpose that space and still provide access to water services and things like that was a splash pad, which can be pretty expensive, but it's a less expensive option versus the pool. Pools never make money, and if they do, you've priced them at a point to where most of your community, especially the part of the community that needs them the most, can't use them, right? So a splash pad is easier. We found one that you push a button, it runs for a couple of minutes, and then it shuts off. So, and then the system flushes down into stormwater or wastewater, and we don't have to spend all the money mechanically for recycling water and filtering and all of that stuff. It's known as a pump and dump system, and you move on from there. We found one that had no step, because that was one of the biggest feedbacks was sometimes kids break their leg or, they're chair bound or something like that. So we went with a no-step option that had plenty of options. We went with sensory activities within there too, and had that everybody wanted the pool. Unfortunately, the pool wasn't feasible. So we massaged PR-wise, this is the way we want to go about it. We got a grant to do it. We're also going to tear down the very much dilapidated bathhouse, reconstruct it with bathrooms and concession stands that the nonprofit groups can use to raise money, and really kind of spun it in a way that it was a major benefit for everybody.
Thank you. For a follow-up question, building of your prior response with the context that led to the decision and heightened public scrutiny, how did you ensure transparency and accountability throughout the implementation of the decision you described?
Sure. We had a couple of different public meetings. Once we had the landscape architecture done. It was part of a grant through CDBG, so we had to have public hearings to go along with it. We kind of went over and above with the number that we were required to have. Just showed off the drawings. We added an amphitheater, which I didn't touch on. We added a accessible play structure. So we had a lot of different pieces to that really showed off the public benefit of repurposing the space that could go a lot farther than a public pool. And we demonstrated financially, like, this is how much it costs to run a pool just to keep it open. That doesn't include the cost of your liability insurances, paying for lifeguards if you can find them. At the time, we weren't having much luck finding quality lifeguards. So, running through all of those things and explaining the financial ramifications of a public pool and what things we would have to sacrifice, and then moving toward the flip side of that, the positive side of things, the no-step splash pad is accessible for everybody. There's sensory equipment there, which is accessible for everybody, and making this public space more inclusive for all kids of all ages. At the time, we had a play structure that was for ages 2 to 5 and one that was 5 to, I think, 10. So older than 10 years old, really, there wasn't much to do that was really fun for them. This was more for everybody, parents included. So, to answer that question, we had a lot of public input into it. We made some minor modifications to where things went in terms of accessibility from the parking lot, and showed a lot of the public benefit during those public meetings about the versatility of all the different tools that we were getting ready to roll out. And thankfully, we were able to obtain the grant, and everything worked out great.
Thank you.
Very good. We're going to transition back to Mr. Lesh.
That's a short question. Describe your leadership style and how do you adapt it when working with different personalities?
Sure. So I learned very early on in my career to understand the why. And what I mean by that is why are people here? I mean, yes, the paycheck is great, but there may be other reasons why people are doing what they do. There may be a love for public safety, and that's why they became a police officer. It's a family tradition kind of thing. From a planning perspective, they may love to, put together, the total scope of a community. So understanding why people are here beyond just the paycheck. And when it comes to that management style, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of relate to them, to motivate them, to find different tools that you can use to motivate staff in that manner. As far as my management style goes, I despise micromanagement. It drives me up a wall. So I'm more along the lines of, we're at point A, here's point B. As long as you get from A to B safely within the scope of the law and within our policies and procedures, I don't really care how you get there. As long as you get there on time, on budget, and within the scope. So that kind of leaves things open to a lot of interpretation for staff. They feel like they have a little bit more creative freedom, for lack of a better term, to be able to accomplish the goals that are set forth. And I've always had an open door policy. If there's a procedure that's in place that slows you down or quagmires everything, I'm all ears. I'm not married to anything that I put on paper. If there's a way to massage it to make it better, to make your life easier, let's roll it out, see how it works. On the flip side of that, accountability is also very high. Because I've given you the creative freedom to get things done, the expectation is that you get them done. So you're not stuck, handcuffed to a very specific way of doing things, and you have that freedom to move. so that when it doesn't get done, now there's a bigger conversation to be had. Is your way of doing things maybe slowing you down? Is there something that we're missing? Is there a tool that you don't have that you need to have to be successful? So, I try to be as hands-on and as supportive as I possibly can, but also maintaining that level of accountability.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. How do you handle employee performance issues, including support, improvement plans, or termination when needed? Please give an example.
So again, going back to the accountability and the support, I'm a firm believer in giving staff the tools they need to be successful. And whether that's a piece of software, a piece of equipment, the creative space to kind of stay out of the way and let them do whatever it is that they need to do. Collaboration, if they need me to pick something up for them, I'm more than happy to do that, as a support role, guiding them toward grant funding or a different way of doing things or a contact and networking tools that I have at my disposal to help them be successful. So. But on the flip side of that, when it comes to accountability and terminating staff, there's a fine line that you have to walk when it comes to terminating staff. That's honestly, it should always be obviously the last resort in terms of performance, right? Usually when you have someone who's struggling performance-wise, there's something off with the why, or there's a tool that they don't have that they need to be successful. So a lot of it comes down to when you notice the performance start to dip, did the reason why they're here change? Is there something going on personally? Do they need an LOA? Do they need just somebody to talk to? Did something change in their life to where maybe we need to adjust working hours or things like that to help them be successful in that aspect? After that, if performance continues to decline or we don't see that improvement, that's when the performance improvement plan comes about. And again, you set those realistic expectations. You manage those expectations in terms of the fallout from not meeting those expectations, and then you move forward from there. And then lastly, of course, is the termination factor there. I had an employee who was missing a lot of time, occasionally would no-call, no-show, or would call in at like noon. We sat down, found out he had some personal issues going on in his life. So we gave him, a week to kind of get his life in order, get his house in order, figure things out. He came back, he was great for a little while, and then performance started to slip again. And he started to not come in on time. And we sat down and we worked with he was a union employee, so we worked with the union pretty closely. Basically, in our conversation with the union, we're like, this isn't the first time it's happened. There's been several no-call, no-shows. We need to game plan how we go forward. So I'm thinking, we'll do a deferred suspension and then we'll go from there. Long story short, these things continue to happen and there's only so much you can do to be supportive in that aspect. And so unfortunately we had to let him go, but the union was supportive in that. And it had nothing really to do with anything internally, which, for lack of a better term, made me feel a little bit better that we had the tools to be successful. It was just something exterior that happened to him. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Thanks. How do you assess department heads and key staff to understand their strengths and areas for improvement, and how do you help them grow in their roles?
Yeah, so I can give you a perfect example of that. My police chief in Belleville, she was the SRO, and then when the chief, before I came on board, the chief was also doing city manager duties, and she kind of assumed a lot of those day-to-day things that a police chief would normally do on top of her role as the SRO. When I came on board, she was sort of the interim acting chief, and we worked collaboratively. I kind of stepped out of the way. Council had given me the freedom to pick my own police chief. They had intentionally not filled that role so that the incoming city manager could fill it. So I got out of the way and just watched her work, watched her interact with her staff, and very early on it became a very clear choice that she was the police chief in every sense of the role. So in that aspect, it was very easy to see. I also had a staff who was for lack of a better term, a front office clerk. You know, it kind of handled some building department stuff, did a little bit of payroll, did a lot of things, a lot of hats that kind of became sort of a catch-all employee that nobody else really had the time or capacity to do. She took it on and ran with it. There were a few things that she struggled with, and so we were able to shift some of those responsibilities to other people. But it became very clear very quickly that she was a perfect candidate for the deputy clerk role that we had available, that sort of filled this HR, payroll, stepped in for the clerk to handle elections when our clerk wasn't available, and really just shined completely. So it was very clear she was in the wrong role, but for the right reason. So we shifted her there. We were able to backfill her spot with somebody that could pick up some of the things that she had struggled with. And it's more of about sitting back, watching your people operate, and then moving them around in the right way or giving them the tools they need to be successful.
Thank you. Transitioning to Councilmember Seal.
Mr. Smith, can you share a specific example from your experience that demonstrates how you build partnerships, engage diverse stakeholders, and involve the community in setting priorities and making key decisions for the greater good?
It's not really much of an administrative example, but during my time as executive director in Eaton Rapids of the Main Street program, the DDA, we had to deal with the fallout from COVID, right? And when all the businesses shut down. So we sat down with all of our stakeholders downtown. We came up with a playbook for them. And we basically mapped out how to get through this, right? If you have to lay staff off, here's how to do it so that you can bring them back quickly, but they can still gain unemployment benefits and things like that during this weird period. If you have older technology that doesn't allow you to do curbside or online ordering, we have a partnership with American Express. They will help you get updated equipment. We have a partnership with Square. They will help you get updated equipment. They'll give you online inventory. They'll give you the updated cash registers and contactless payments and all those things. We worked with them to how to set up an online store, how to, some of the tools that were available that were out there that were free or as close to free as you could get to set up an online store, and we would kind of give them the links, how to set things up, and then how to transition from being in-store only to takeout only or curbside only. And we were very proud of that playbook. We shared it with the Main Street program so they could share it with other communities if need be. And we compiled every tool we could possibly find because there was a lot of support for businesses. It was just scattered. It was everywhere. So we brought it all under one umbrella, put it into a booklet, and sent it out to all of them. And we were very pleased that we didn't lose a single business during COVID downtown, which was fantastic. So including restaurants, which was huge. I mean, so I'd say that's probably one of my more shining examples of that, with the collaboration, working with all the business owners to make that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. We're going to transition back to Councilmember Rice. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. What kind of organizational culture do you try to create and maintain as a city manager, and how do you ensure that your team fosters a positive and inclusive work environment?
Absolutely. So this job is hard enough. This job is stressful enough, especially as a department head. There's a lot of irons in the fire for everybody all the time, right? So as I said, I try not to micromanage. I try to get out of the way, let them operate so that creative freedom can happen sort of organically, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So I'm very laid back. I like to laugh and joke and listen to music and have a good time, but there's also work to be done. So there's that expectation that we're not here to party, but we're not here to be stuffed shirt, suit and tie. Everything's got to be by the book all the time. There's time to kind of relax and breathe a little bit. I try to collaborate with my department heads quite a bit. We'll try to get out of the office a little bit to have different department head meetings and things like that. We'll get together at a restaurant, we'll have lunch, we'll just be a little bit more laid back so they can relax a little bit, tend to be a little bit more open when you're not within the four walls of this building, right? And every department head is welcome to come. We don't necessarily exclude anyone. If your workload can't handle it, great, we'll catch you on the next one. And sort of having that free-form environment. I encourage all the department heads to work collaboratively to make sure that nothing's getting missed. the previous round of interviews with the department head meeting was a pretty good example of that, where we talked about different scenarios and how things were going to work internally with the scenario that we were given. And it was, okay, these two department heads need to work together to come up with a plan, and we'll see how that works. And these two department heads should come together to see how we're going to afford to pay for it. And kind of having that collaborative, everybody's in it together. This specific problem isn't necessarily a planning problem or economic development problem or a clerk problem or a police problem. Everybody has to come together to solve that.
Mr. Smith, the next two questions, we're going to transition to Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Jason, are there situations where you believe a city manager or department head should speak publicly on an issue without direct approval by the council, for example, involving a developer, community group, or infrastructure project? If so, when and why?
You don't even have to put up the cards for that one, Nate. No, having a media background, it's pretty easy and natural for me to be able to speak publicly and to be able to talk to the media and things like that. But to make sure that you have a clear, concise message that is consistent no matter who the media talks to. In Jackson, I was fortunate enough to have a public information officer where myself as the mayor, the city manager, and whomever the department head that was involved in that, we would collaborate, we would create the message. The PIO was the point of contact. If the media called the mayor, the media called the city manager, you need to talk to him. This is our point person. This is the one who has the message. It's consistent, it's clear, it's the same person delivering the same message. In all my other stops, I have not been fortunate enough to have that position, so normally that role falls onto me. Typically, that message needs to be crafted with the support of council. If it's a time-sensitive thing, it may be, I've already prepared it, here it is, if there's any tweaks, let me know by X time, because we need to get this out right now. I had an example of that in Belleville. We had an Eagle violation notice, and we started to discuss, these are the things we have to have in this. How do we want to get that message out? Like, there's a very specific template that we have to use. Do we put it in the newsletter? Do we send it separately? Do we post it online? Do we put it in the paper? How do we get that message out? But it's also time sensitive. We have 10 days to get it out. So there was a lot of collaboration between myself, the mayor, and a couple of members of city council. We landed on, we're going to put it in the newsletter because that's getting ready to go out in 4 or 5 days at that time. And we put it in there, we got it out. No harm, no foul with Eagle. They were pleased with that, and the message was crafted, and everybody was consistent with that message, and we all understood that's the message, that's the delivery. If there's any questions that come about, refer back to that. So.
Number 2, as you step into a city manager role, how will you ensure that any ongoing investigations or studies nearing completion are reviewed and acted upon appropriately?
So in terms of studies, are you talking like maybe a PACER study or investigations in terms of like sort of departmentally with?
In our example, a fire department study.
Oh, okay, sure. We're actually in the middle of this right now in Belleville with our fire department as well. We have consultants that are putting together a study for us. So when you come in, my goal has always been, we're not going to rock the boat too much the first little while I'm here. You have to get accustomed to how things are done, sort of reconcile how you do things with how the community currently does things, and along with that, all the things that are currently in motion, continue to let them be in motion, right? Because council has obviously authorized them. That's a direction council wants to take. That's the direction we need to see play out. Now, once we get those studies back or those investigations back and we have a full picture of what's happening, then we can change course and we can start rowing in a different direction if need be. But I'm a firm believer in letting those things play out as they need to play out.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, I have the next two questions. The first is, how do you approach conflict resolution, and how do you work to de-escalate situations professionally without adding tension or distractions?
Sure. Actually, I have a perfect example of this in Public Works. We had 2 employees that just could not get along. They didn't work well together. We tried to keep them separated as best we could, but when they would have to work as part of the whole group, it would not go well at all. It was a disaster. So essentially, I had the department head, my public works director, step in, have a conversation with them, try to hash it out. He said, "I think we've got everything sorted out." Okay, cool. So we didn't exactly, make them shake hands and start working together exclusively, but it was, when they work together, still clashed. And so at that point, from an accountability perspective, it's my time to step in. And essentially, I locked the two of them in a room with me, and I said, we're going to hash this out right now. And if we can't figure it out, then we're going to game plan who goes where, and that's going to be the end of it. I said, this is, for lack of a better term, this is a safe zone for you. Whatever's said in this room stays in this room. We have this conversation, and we're done with it. And they had some very open and honest dialogue with each other. And come to find out, there was something very, very minor that they disagreed on that was one of those things that really shouldn't even have been talking about at work in the first place. So it was a very easy reconciliation there to sort of get them to hash it out. But it's really giving people the space to have those open dialogues and have those open conversations. And when they're in a more professional setting, you feel like you have to deliver your message professionally. But when you can get two people that clash behind closed doors and say, we need to hash this out, whatever it takes. And I was taught that very early on by one of my city managers when I was in Jackson. He said, you and I can fight like cats and dogs when this door is closed, but when it opens, we're on the same page, full stop. And so I've tried to take that philosophy of we're going to hash it out, we're going to figure it out, but when this door opens, we're a team. End of discussion. So.
Thank you for that. Shifting gears, what is your experience with municipal economic development? What do you see as Saline's top needs for attracting and keeping businesses? And how would you utilize your skills to support growth?
Sure. So one of the things that was mentioned in the plans that were available online was sort of the connectivity, inclusivity, the quality of life, and economic development plays a huge role in that, along with a lot of other things. Economic development is tied into basically every aspect of city government. So at the end of the day, a lot of business owners, they want to make sure that they can get their goods in and out of your community, whether by rail, by air, by road. So you need to make sure all of those are in good shape. If they need help with the police department, they show up when you call them. And when, God forbid, there's a fire, the fire department can get there fairly quickly to save their businesses. Beyond that, everything that you do is a bonus, but it all starts with making sure that it's easy for people to start said business in your community. So you have your basic public services available to you. You also look to have an online presence. We did this in Eaton Rapids where everything was kind of scattered in terms of how do I start a business? Where do I go? Can I put my business here? Can I put my business there? We put all of that online. It was a one-stop shop. Put in your address. This is what you can and can't have there. This is a link to the zoning code. This is what you can build there. This is what it looks like in terms of the building design standards. These are what you can and can't have. And these are the licenses that you need. Here's a link to LARA to make sure there's nothing at the state level you need. And really making it very, very simple for businesses to open and work as seamlessly as possible with local government. Because sometimes we can get in the way of a lot of really good progress. And I learned that in Litchfield, they were very hands-off when it came to their industrial park in the TIF district. And thankfully, the lessons that I learned there in terms of being completely transparent with business owners or prospective business owners with what they need to open up shop. I got a phone call on a Thursday from a company that was looking to relocate to Michigan. They asked me some questions about the building. It always helps to know what you have available in your community and some of the specifics to it. We created property information plans that had specs and what you can and can't build there and square footage and all that fun stuff. Anyway, I got that phone call on a Thursday. By Sunday, they had signed the lease because they were ready to go. So it's really about just having that open door, having all of those pieces in place so that all of your information is readily accessible. And then having that quality of life that's available to them so that just like any resident, they can enjoy having their operations here.
Thank you, sir. We're going to transition back to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. Sorry, my pages are stuck together. It's a little humid in here. Recognizing how critical the first 90 days are in setting the tone for leadership and building momentum, what specific goals or actions do you believe are most important to accomplish early on to ensure a strong and successful start as city manager?
It starts with understanding the challenges that each department has. And one of the first things that I've done in my career in both Litchfield and in Belleville was to sit down with the department heads. What do you need? What's holding you back? Like, where are our sticking points? Where are our pain points? In Belleville, on the public works side, it was all my stuff's broken. I don't have weed trimmers that work. I don't have a lawnmower that works. I don't have this that works. Cool. Let's get that on the agenda to get those purchased and get those moving forward. In Litchfield, it was more of a support system. It's, I don't really know where to go to handle X, Y, and Z from a reporting perspective, or we're not really sure what Lansing's doing with these laws and these bills, and having that knowledge base there to kind of give them those tools. From there, it's giving them the support that they need to be successful. Then you outline those plans, you outline those expectations, you manage those department expectations, and tell them, yeah, I would love to get you a dump truck this year, but that's $500,000 that I just don't have available readily to you. We need to find a way to get that into the asset management plan or the capital improvement plan, and try to move our numbers around so that we can get that for you as quickly as possible. And again, it goes back to managing expectations in terms of what you expect from them on a daily basis, day to day, how you operate, how they operate, and what you need to do to make that dynamic work. Again, it go back to understanding the why. Why are you here? What makes you want to be here? What, if anything, would make you ever consider leaving? Is there something holding you up? And is it, you just don't have the tools, you don't have the right support, you don't have the financial consideration? What are those things? And then understanding all of those pain points, relaying them to council in a way that helps us game plan how to move forward with those departments. And again, it's about not really rocking the boat too much, right? So you just want to understand how the community does things, reconcile that with how you have traditionally done things. I'm very much not married to a lot of the way I do things, so I try to be as adaptable as humanly possible, and so that it's not a full 180 when somebody comes in and this is the way I've always done it. It works. It's successful. I don't care. I'm going to do it my way. Don't want to do that. So it's really about understanding where everybody is and where we need to go going forward, and then managing those expectations.
Thank you very much.
Back to Councilmember Seal.
Mr. Smith, as you consider the priorities and focus areas outlined in our strategic plan, which specific goals do you feel your background and experience best position you to support completion?
So my skill set is somewhat well-rounded, I would say. I feel like I've been exposed to a lot of different challenges in my career. Quality of life is a big one for me. A lot of that starts and stops with quality of life. If you don't have the tax base here, or you don't have the residents here to fund everything else, that kind of puts a full stop on things. So you want to make sure that you are delivering the best quality basic essential services and building on that from there. And that comes down to your fiscal stewardship, right? And understanding where you are financially, where you can go financially, and what things you can deliver from a quality of life perspective based on those finances. It also comes with having an effective and optimized internal staff and understanding how they can maximize those tax dollars. Are we doing things that are just, quite frankly, wasting money? If we find ourselves in the summertime constantly working overtime every single day, do we move to 4 10-hour days so we can make the most out of the daylight hours and then shift back in the evenings? Is it staff has a lot of downtime in certain areas? Do we shift them to other roles and responsibilities so that we can maximize our payroll? and then thereby open up more opportunity financially for some of those quality of life things. And then, obviously, managing your assets also helps with quality of life. If your playgrounds are falling apart, doesn't really do a whole lot of good for you from a neighborhood perspective, bringing those things in. So I think from my perspective, it boils down to, in my career, it's always been about quality of life. And I've tried to, throughout my stops, make sure that I have the basics down first. You want to nail those things before you try to, you gotta crawl before you can walk, right? So nailing those basic services, police, fire, infrastructure, roads, and then you build off of that from there.
Okay, thank you.
And now to Councilmember Harmount.
Yes. What unique strengths would you bring to this role that might not currently exist? Why will it be transformative for Saline?
Sure. So from my background, as you all well know, I have a little bit of a media background. I've sat on the dais before, so I'm familiar with the pressures that come with being an elected official. And so I feel like I'm uniquely suited to deliver information in a way that's been processed from my educational background and my professional experience in a way that's easily digestible for a counselor to deliver to the public, right? It's delivered in a way that is not necessarily overly technical or filled with jargon, and it's presented in such a way to where any of you can go out into the public and say, this is a good idea and here's why. And it's a very simple, very basic explanation, because that was the information that I always wanted as sitting on the dais as a mayor, was how do I deliver this message to the public if I'm asked about it? Because they don't get exposed to this daily like we do. So a lot of that overly technical stuff they're gonna get lost, and it's gonna come out as political speak and turn around and all that kind of fun spin stuff that you deal with. Also, being a member of the media, transparency is a huge deal, right? And having accuracy, having the full picture is always something that's critical for a council person to have. So in my role, I've always tried to deliver whatever I'm delivering in a way that's completely transparent and gives you the full picture of everything that you're working with. Whether it's money, this is what we're buying, and this is where it's coming from, and this is what we're looking at when we've purchased it financially from that fund, or it's we feel like we should go with this company versus this company, even though it's a little bit more because they're local or they have a better reputation, and we've had conversations with both parties, and we feel like this is the way to go. If you're looking at a bid perspective or something like that. And I can give you an example. In Belleville, we've sometimes not gone with the lowest bidder because the next lowest bidder was local, and our preference was to be local. And that's going to be one of the number one questions that get asked is, why didn't you go with the low bidder? Well, because the other bidder was local and we wanted to keep those dollars here. And that's a much easier conversation to have than, well, technically we have this, and then there's a 10% buffer for this, and then and it just becomes too convoluted and people tune out. So I think that's probably the biggest asset that I bring to the table for all of you on the dais is that it's the message is delivered in a unique way that comes from both my media and professional backgrounds.
We very much enjoyed the conversation tonight. Before we wrap up, Mr. Smith, are there any specific questions you have for us? Or are there anything more that you'd like to add?
Not really. I think we talked about some of the biggest challenges last time. What, as a council, do you see from an internal perspective are the biggest strengths?
The biggest strengths of the organization? Mm-hmm. Well, let's just go down the dais so that everyone has an opportunity to answer. I don't want to speak for the whole group. Maybe limit your response to one or two items. But Mr. Lesh, can I start with you today, and I'll end with myself and Councilmember Harmount?
I'd like to think that Saline has a great feeling of community. I mean, we generally band together pretty well on most things. There's noise in the background of any city, but I think overall we're a pretty tight group.
Mr. Seal?
I agree with Mr. Lush. I think we have a very supportive community for government here, And I think that we have an excellent staff right now on board with the city. We have some young people who bring good ideas, and I think a lot of people are very energetic in how they approach the job. I think it's a solid basis to work from.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
And the collective answer is sense of community. No, that is definitely something we've seen it when there's, when there's positives, when there's negatives. I mean, we definitely have community support. We have a very engaged community. We have a very engaged staff. And I think that's really vital. The people that sit up here, I mean, we're a small community. You're going to see somebody at the grocery store or at the restaurant, and, they're going to chat you up, and they're going to want to know what's happening. And we're very open about it. I mean, the good, the bad, the ugly, you've got to put it out there. And I appreciate that you made that comment, because there's nothing worse than not telling people something, because a nothing turns into something very quickly.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
I'm going to go a little different. I think right now our strength is our financial position. We worked hard. We have a very good tax base. Future, that's where the challenge will be. But coming into here, we've done a lot of things that have made us very much a stable community, and we want to continue to see that happening. The other part of it is this community is very much a educated community. They look at projects, they look at things, they want things done correctly, they expect expectations. So they're not going to necessarily not agree with you, but they're going to want to know why and how. And I think that's one of the best aspects of here, because our schools are the biggest strength in this community, and that plays out into everything that happens within our society and our schools. So having that to continue is where I see our strengths are.
Councilmember Rice?
I would say everyone cares. Everyone inside this building cares. Everyone in this community cares. I'm just trying to find my way of life after leaving the federal government sector. And one of the things I used to say about my colleagues is that we all cared about our job. We can go out into the public sector. It's the same here. They can go out into the public sector. They can go out into the private sector, but being here in the public sector, I've seen the looks on people's faces when they haven't been able to accomplish a task for one thing or the other. And I know for a fact that city services and completion of projects literally keep staff in this building up at night. And when I say staff, I mean all of them. I don't just mean department heads. So I think, that's the number one thing in my mind to know as a city manager coming in here, is that you have a staff that really, really cares about what they do and about this community.
Councilmember Harmount?
I moved here because I'm a transplant from outside of Saline, and I moved here for the schools, I moved here for the historic charm, and I moved here for the aesthetic beauty of all the parks that we have. With that being said, when I moved here after I started living here, I was really warmed by how everybody wanted to help, and it was a very helpful community, and people really want to help get to the solution. And so I think that we have a very broad and really succinct skill set out there in our community with the educational level that we have, that I think is an opportunity to be better tapped. And I'd be looking forward to that for our future or existing city manager.
Mr. Smith, I think all my colleagues gave great answers. I'm particularly proud of our recently adopted strategic plan, because I think it's the most inclusive and comprehensive in the city's history, and it is the culmination of hundreds of hours of dedication, input, and dialogue with my council colleagues, and community members. The only other thing I would add, and multiple colleagues touched on this, is our greatest asset is undoubtedly our people. If Salinians pull in one direction, there's nothing that cannot be accomplished. And I continue to be amazed and impressed by the dedication, the fortitude, and the commitment of those who live and work in the community. Anything else for us before we depart. Well, thank you. This does officially conclude our interview. Our goal is to discuss these interviews tonight with the goal of possibly developing consensus and/or making a conditional offer to a selected candidate. We so appreciate your time. Great discussion, and have a great evening and stay cool out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Restroom. Yes, I need to run the We good? Okay. Ms. Cole, are you good? Okay. Well, good evening, and we welcome you here. We're grateful to have the conversation. Your continued interest in serving our community is truly appreciated. At this second and final round of interviews, Ms. Cole, our goal is to deepen our conversation around your experience, leadership style, and vision for Saline. We hope to better understand how you would approach the responsibilities of this role, work with council and staff, and help guide our community forward. We have 14 questions that my colleagues and I have prepared to work through, and we'd like to do that over the next 55 to 60 minutes. I want to be respectful of your time, but also that of my colleagues. So we ask, of course, that you use your time wisely. Today's discussion is also a critical step as we move towards a final decision. At the conclusion of this process, we anticipate being in a position, to develop consensus and or make a conditional offer to a candidate we believe is best aligned with the needs and goals of our city. Thank you again for your time and commitment to public service. And before we begin, I'm going to let Nate go over just a few preliminaries.
So Ms. Cole, as you heard, we've got 14 questions, 3 minutes each. I'll give you an indicator when we're about halfway through. I'll let you know when we've got 30 seconds, time to bring it to a close, and then when we're out of time, time to wrap it up. Okay?
Are you good?
Yes, thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, we're going to let Councilmember Lesh begin.
All right, first one's that short one. How do you keep yourself and your team accountable to meet deadlines and meet goal expectations?
First of all, I think it's very, very, very important to build the foundation of trust. Once you establish trust in a relationship with your employees, then they can have a certain level of autonomy. Setting clear goals so that our employees know what is expected of them is so important. Checking in on a regular basis, giving them support along the way, and clearly communicating if there are any deviations from the plan.
Councilmember Harmount.
Ms. Cole, please share a specific example where you had to support your elected body and community through a complex and unpopular but necessary conversation and decision. When answering this question, please be sure to discuss 1, the strategies you deployed, and 2, the outcomes realized.
Thank you very much for that question. It's so true. Unfortunately, us in public, we face unpopular decisions all the time. It is just part of government life. I can give you a great example of a time where we walked through a previous community. We had private waste pickup. This was a feature that was as loved as much as our fall leaf pickup. Residents had relationships with the employees, and they had trust. They felt like they were safe. And the alternative of a different private company coming in certainly brought in fear. With that, so the first strategy we deployed was holding a lot of town halls. After we evaluated and made sure that it was financially the right way to go, which elicited a 30% cost savings to our community, we started navigating town halls, getting out educational materials. And once we realized that the 2 key components were that quality customer service and the relationship that they had with the people who were coming to their homes and picking up their garbage, we knew what to focus on. The strategy we deployed was when we put out bids for the service, part of the bid included them hiring our employees and qualifying that they must stay on the route. That led to us being able to have our employees leave without being laid off. It allowed them to keep being able to work. It allowed the relationships to continue, and it allowed the quality of service to continue as well. During the first 6 months, there was a lot of skepticism, a lot of hesitation, and quite a few concerns and complaints. But after the 6-month mark moved past us, those complaints dissipated. They realized it was the same people coming to their house. They were getting the same quality service, and they were very happy that it impacted their taxes in a positive way.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. I have a follow-up question. Building of your prior response with the context that led to the decision and heightened public scrutiny, how did you ensure transparency and accountability throughout the implementation of the decision you described?
That's a great question. Transparency is so important when you're making these decisions, because if you don't have transparency and allow the public to see how you're making the decision and what qualities, what metrics you're using to do so, it can incite more fear when they're already going through change. The first thing we did was put out those educational materials. We released the report that we did, the feasibility study, to show everyone how much it would cost. The folks were very happy when we released the bid and they saw that we wanted to keep the employees of ours retained. And then the last thing that we did to really impact transparency was we put out a lot of information. The services that they would get, and we went through detail. Now, we just closed our waste management contract. Everyone in this room knows how complex they can be. So getting these very big, complex ideas and situations into a point where we could condense it and it was easily understood was quite a big task. So we worked very hard to develop these materials, and we just over and over again put them out to the community. We also set up a hotline so people could call if they had concerns. We promised to do that for a full year after the transition to ensure that all of our residents were taken care of.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Transitioning back to Councilmember Lesh.
Describe your leadership style. How do you adapt it when working with different personalities?
That's a great question, because you can't be the same leader to every single person. My leadership style, I would describe as agile, strategic, and truly rooted in emotional intelligence. I listen like my job depends on it, because it does. I certainly focus in on consistency and being clear and showing care. What that means also is that at my core, I would consider myself a servant leader, but with a systems thinking mindset. What that means is not only do I build great processes, but I build great teams too. A key component of my leadership style is alignment. Alignment is key to any leader. What I work on right now is I work on balancing and aligning budget with our vision, plan with implementation, and our people with purpose. Everything needs to be aligned and balanced in order for that to happen. The other thing that I think is really important to mention is that while structure is extremely important, I lead with empathy and care. While we have high expectations at the City of Saline, we also have great support, training. I lift people up even though I hold them accountable. And I love actually to celebrate all wins, big and small. So to sum it up, I lead with my head, I lead with my heart and my backbone, and I truly feel that great leadership is built on communication and trust.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. How do you handle employee performance issues, including support, improvement plans, or termination when needed? Please give an example.
We talked a little bit about vision alignment. So that's where I would start. I would start with one-on-one time, regular check-ins, making sure that they actually have the support and training they need. Sometimes when we look at a position, we think, oh, this is definitely the box of training they need. But every single person is different and everyone needs a different style of support. So that's my first step. My second step would be that I certainly would, clarify the support that we're going to give and the plan and the training so that they have clear expectations again of what the city expects from them. And I would do follow-ups to make sure that along the way they feel like they're getting the right training, they're getting the right support, and really listening in those one-on-ones. The last thing that I think that is really important is two things actually. One is to empower our employees during this process, which might sound a little backwards when you're having someone with a performance issue. But the more autonomy that you can give someone who's in trouble, and the more that you can empower them and encourage them with the good things, the faster and the more productive they're going to be at improving their own behavior. And then the last thing that I love is systems of two-way feedback. Obviously non-retaliatory. I like them to be anonymous, because without knowing where we need to improve, we'll never get to our goal. And I want to give you an example like you asked for. I had actually a high-ranking employee in a previous community that was my treasurer. And I know Treasury pretty well with my finance background. And all of a sudden, the work started to slip. I started to see some entries that didn't make sense. Some work was incorrect. Some things had gotten approved that by the treasurer that I certainly didn't approve when it came to my desk. So the first thing I did was sit down and have that one-on-one. What's going on? We got to sit down, we talked, we had a great conversation. This person might have been struggling with a few, personal things in their life. The behavior improved for a few weeks, and then it started to happen again. This time, they started to not show up for work. Immediately, I went to my HR director, we sat down, we made a plan. And when the person came back, we offered them true mental health support services, wraparound services, and even allowed them the ability to, after some time, work from home until they were able to come back in the office. That difficult situation, as tough as it was, ended up building a bond between that treasurer and I. And still to this day, they call me for advice. We get to talk about what's happening in their life, and I get to be a wonderful reference for them. It's just, sometimes when things are going bad, we think that the end is near, when truly it can be turned around and be an even stronger relationship.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Transitioning to Councilmember Rice.
Excuse me, thank you. Un momento. How do you assess department heads and key staff to understand their strengths and areas for improvement, and how do you help them grow in their roles? Excuse me.
This comes down to that time. There's no other way to assess your department heads without the time with them. Once you can sit down and have the time, have those one-on-ones and have talks with them, get to know their style, get to know how they like to have their leader behave and act around them. And I always ask my team, give us 3 things that you really like and 3 things that you don't like, so that it affords them the opportunity to automatically suggest things that we could improve. There's also work quality. I truly believe in reviewing work in detail, not to simply assess, but to help and support and to coach. Once the trust is established in a relationship, and I see the work production, and I know the quality, and we have that back and forth relationship and the trust is built, then that department head has full autonomy. Making sure that reports come in on time, and then it just becomes kind of a cadence where we hopefully can be allies together instead of it being me checking in on their work.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Councilmember Seal.
Ms. Cole, can you share a specific example from your experience that demonstrates how you build partnerships, engage diverse stakeholders, and involve the community in setting priorities and making key decisions for the greater good?
To me, this is one of the most important characteristics of a city manager. Building connections, building those relationships, and knowing people in your community is so important. I'm going to give you an example from here in Saline. Recently, with our fire department, I was able to go out and have some discussions with some nearby townships, and I learned that through the process that many of the cities in the area were purchasing their own ambulances. Without the knowledge of that, what that means to us is that we may be the only one without that process. We might be one of the few that are not leading edge of moving towards providing our own ambulance services, even though the communities around us are. And that can impact our bill depending on who we're contracting with. It's just a very small example of how if we don't connect with the people around us, Saline is going to be left behind. Another great example of that, very quickly, is certainly the green space. Being able to connect with stakeholders, even being able to go with the mayor and seeking certain endowments and donations for objects that we're going to put on our green space, our features. So being able to connect all the systems from downtown to the stakeholders around us, to our community partners, to the other units around us is key in success and collaboration. And certainly with upcoming changes in the government, smaller local units are going to have more responsibility. And with that responsibility, we're going to need our team around us. We're going to need to do that collectively. We're going to have to collaborate with our partners around us in order to make things work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Seal. Back to Councilmember Rice.
Thank you. Got a cough drop this time. What kind of organizational culture do you try to create and maintain as a city manager? And how do you ensure your team fosters a positive and inclusive work environment?
Thank you. Having a positive and inclusive work environment is incredibly important. And I think it actually starts from the beginning with the job description and making sure that our processes of hiring are inclusive to everyone. Starting there, and then also, and I'm please forgive me, could you repeat the first part of that question?
What kind of culture do you try to create and maintain?
I try to create and maintain a very positive culture that has clear, distinct goals and grace and support and care around them.
Transition.
I couldn't tell if you were done or not, sorry.
Okay.
You
My
need a
apologies.
cough drop too. Thank you so much.
Transitioning to Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Great. Are there situations where you believe a city manager or department head should speak publicly on an issue without direct approval from council? For example, involving a developer, community group, or infrastructure project? If so, when and why?
I think that if the city is in danger, if ethics are in danger, that department head certainly should be stepping over the city manager. If there's fraud involved, if there are situations where harassment's not being addressed, all of those things the city manager should be handling. And if those serious situations are not being attended to, I do think it is completely appropriate for the department head to reach out to someone else. Everyone needs to have a backup. Everyone needs to have a place where they can go. My favorite way this is developed right now, reporting, I'm the only one that reports to you. And I would love to see a structure that was set up where we have the treasurer reporting to the city manager and city council, and the police chief reporting to city council and the city manager. This gives employees another person to go talk to before it's elevated to city council. I think it's a very safe, inclusive way to handle things.
Mr. Gearbaugh, you also have the next question.
Excuse me. As you step into the city manager role, how will you ensure that any ongoing investigation or studies nearing completion are reviewed and acted upon appropriately?
Currently, as acting city manager, this was a problem that I had to overcome when I came into the role. Immediately, I used our project management software to load all of the studies that we're doing and track the progress of where we're at. What's beautiful about this system is that everyone can see it, all department heads have access to it, and that knowledge, that institutional knowledge of what's happening here in the city of Saline can be easily transferred over to anyone.
Ms. Cole, I have the next two questions. How do you approach conflict resolution, and how do you work to de-escalate situations professionally without adding tension or distractions?
What it comes down to is that foundation that I've been talking about. If you have a foundation with an employee and you have that trust built, you sit down and you start with a one-on-one and you spend time with the person. You get to know what those issues are and how you can help them. Certainly, having goals, using our EDP process and tracking those on a regular basis, making them serious performance evaluations and a place where we can grow and learn from each other, not just downward, but upward, is equally as important. I certainly listen to all of my employees, and I love feedback. I love it when people tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I know that sounds backwards, but that is the only time I get better, truly grow. And I welcome that feedback. And I know when I have a team member that gives me that feedback, that I've built that trust, that foundation, and it's a very successful relationship.
Transitioning to a completely different subject, but one of equal importance. What is your experience with municipal economic development? What do you see as Saline's top needs for attracting and keeping businesses? And how would you utilize your skill set to support growth?
My experience with economic development is long. Every community that I've been a part of, I deal with our residents. I deal with our customers. I deal with our businesses and our stakeholders in my roles. So it's very important for me to develop those relationships and to, please forgive me.
Take some water if you need it.
Yes.
By all means.
I don't want to have a coughing fit into the microphone. Could you repeat the last part of that?
I'll repeat the last two parts. So you mentioned your municipal economic development experience. What do you see as Saline's top needs for attracting and keeping businesses? And how would you use your particular skill set to support growth?
One of our top needs is growth and development. We certainly need it in our industrial area, our commercial area, our residential area, and our housing, and we need it in our downtown for placemaking. With all of those, what our top needs are is we need to set some incentives. We need to look at our commercial districts and see what types of incentives that we can do. We need to evaluate if there are any other tax incentive districts that we can set up in the city of Saline. The other need that we have is certainly our housing. Right now, the average price, if memory serves, is about $450,000 for a house in Saline. That means to not have PMI, you have to have $90,000 down to save. A family of four that might make $250,000 a year or less, that's still even hard to attain. So really working hard on creating that housing and that capital stack is very important. We've started this work with a housing coalition. We've started placemaking in downtown, which is another really important area of growth. Downtown is the heart of the city. And if we can get downtown thriving and just flourishing, the rest of the city will also.
Thank you. We're going to transition back to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. Recognizing how critical the first 90 days are in setting the tone for leadership and building momentum, what specific goals or actions do you believe are most important to accomplish early on to ensure a strong and successful start as city manager?
Starting as city manager would be a different start for me than it would be the other city managers. I've already been here. I've already established a relationship with many of the department heads. And during the first 90 days, I would listen, and I would listen very carefully. And I want to know, over the last 6 months when we've been working together, what's going good? Tell me 3 things that are going good. And then I want to know what 3 things are not going good that we can work on. And if that needs to be anonymous, I would love to have that sentence so that we can start to work on making that relationship better, systems better, processes better, and our teams better. Then after I kind of listened and got the feedback, that's when the alignment comes in. I would set up meetings for all of us, smaller meetings, weekly meetings with teams, cross collaboration with different teams, and all staff meetings. Certainly one of the things that I've used in the past is a weekly video message. That would be something that I would love to set up. I think it's really, really, really important for employees to be connected with what's bigger, that they see not just their job of what they do siloed every day, but they see how that piece fits into the bigger part of the city, and they can feel safe and welcome to grow within that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Seal?
Ms. Cole, as you consider the priorities and focus areas outlined in our current strategic plan, which specific goals do you feel your background and experience best position you to support completion?
Well, that is an easy question for me. Fiscal stewardship, which I have already put a lot of time and effort into. But on top of that, I think that looking at our strategic plan, I think that I have some other really important things to offer. With effective asset management, I have developed CIPs for the last 20 plus years. I know assets inside and out. And I would love to take that knowledge and elevate our asset management even further. We have assets right now that we are investing millions and millions of dollars in. Do we have good maintenance plans for those? Have we done a good job of taking care of our assets? Are we planning for the future? Does anyone know what the wastewater treatment plant is going to cost to operate for the next 10 years? These are all things that we need to think about with effective asset management. We really need to focus on the dollars that we're investing. We really need to focus in on taking care of what we purchased. The other thing that I would love to see with our strategic plan is more weighting and more metrics that we could use to show you our progress. Right now, I think that we want our strategic plan to be agile so that we can adjust, because the goals that we have now may not be the same as even a year ago. Economic conditions change, governmental climate, laws change. Staff is left right now with not really knowing what is the most important thing to council in that strategic plan. What are the things that are kind of loose on the bottom, where if there's time constraints or money constraints, we start to fall behind? What are the loose things that aren't quite as important? And those are all things that we would need to and want to know from you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harmount?
Yes. What unique strengths would you bring to this role that might not currently exist? Why will it be transformative for Saline?
The most unique skill set that I can bring to the city of Saline is bringing people together. I've done that as acting city manager. The relationship between the chamber and the city, the relationship between downtown and the city, the relationship between our outside businesses and our industrial partners, even our partners that are right outside our borders and Washtenaw County. I have worked to develop those relationships in the last 6 months, and I think it's very clear that that is a strength of mine, and it's one of the biggest parts of our mission, and that is to bring people together. And I certainly have a very unique skill in bringing people together that no one ever thought would be.
Are there any specific questions that you have for us or any comments that you would like to make before we wrap up this evening?
Absolutely. I'm not going to let a chance for me to ask you questions go by. I want to know what you feel is the biggest challenge facing us today. I want to know what is the most important thing for you to fix. If you could fix it, what lingering problem is sitting in the back of your mind always?
Okay, so actually the second individual that we interviewed asked us a question as well, a different question, but in the same general vein, and I allowed each of my colleagues to answer because I don't speak for the entire group. So again, I'll begin with Mr. Lesh to my right and end with Councilmember Harmount and then myself.
Well, it's the big elephant in the room. It's funding for everything. I mean, it's a tight environment for any kind of funding for any of the projects going on. So, it's a big haul.
Mr. Seal?
I think that's exacerbated by the fact that prices just keep rising and rising and rising. and I see no end in sight. It's been going on for a number of years now, and I think it's only going to continue. So I think it's going to make the funding thing even more critical in the future.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Well, I think it's, obviously financial stability is a key aspect. We need to, I've always said it, the city is a small city with very high expectations, and the city has done a magnificent job fulfilling those obligations and meeting all the expectations. We are going to have to start to cut back. There's only so much money left at this point. And so kind of trying to reprioritize to understand that aspect of it, I think is going to be a key aspect for us moving forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
From my perspective, I've watched your work on financials and how you've helped stabilize our community, brought us in money and all of those things, which I believe that's the strong point we have right now. It's the future. We have too many unknown questions related to, can we continue with the rec center? Who's going to participate? Who's going to be a partner? How are we going to pay for our roads? How many more millages are going to be added? It's not so much the issue of money, because we know we can always tax for more, whether the community wants to support it or not. It's what are we going to be in terms of achieving those the most effectively and efficiently with the staff and the size of the community we have now. We must have a dedicated staff that works extremely smart, works extremely well together, and deserves to be recognized for that ability. And when they deliver, we will deliver.
Councilmember Rice?
I think our biggest challenge is also our biggest opportunity in that we need to bring in diverse economics to bring down the cost for residents. And that can be in a number of ways, through new TIF districts with our commercial districts, downtown businesses, development, annexing land, getting more people into the city. But I also think another key component to that is bridging this gap with the schools. I think the weight of the taxes that our community pays, our 10,000 residents pays to support 40,000 plus who have, who are in the school district is kind of out of the norm. So I think, those are both opportunities and challenges that we have currently.
Councilmember Harmount?
I think that our opportunity is in more succinct processes and procedures, and it's very important that fiscal stewardship, as you mentioned, you can get there two ways. You can get there by being more efficient with your expenditures and also not wasting time and money based on reactionary as opposed to strategic planning or having processes that are not well thought out or vetted. Again, goals should be measurable, and we need to make sure that we continue to protect our taxpayers' money and provide them with the highest level of service that they deserve in this community.
Let me just say, I am so happy to hear all of you say that you're concerned about finances. That might sound backwards because I was in charge of the finances, but you are absolutely right to be concerned about it and about the growth. They go hand in hand. I'm not sure how many of you talk about this or think about it, but really the break-even point for our city where we're financially healthy is about 16,000 people. We have a lot of growing we need to do to be able to afford the services. So then we are left in a spot where we need to look at our processes, look at our expenditures, and make sure that we're putting people's tax dollars in the place that are going to work the most for the city.
Let me add, as a member of the body, all of my colleagues gave good answers. I'm of the opinion that organizations, and it's not just limited to municipal governmental organizations, but I think a lot of organizations focus on the symptoms rather than the foundational issues. And we addressed some of this in the questioning tonight, but foundationally, I think a challenge and an opportunity for a community like Saline is developing a healthy, robust, and growing local economy. And that includes an eclectic mix of quality of life enriching commercial enterprises that provide jobs. It's a diverse array of housing opportunities and smart, cutting-edge, larger enterprises and industries. And if we can get the economy right, if we can grow in a manageable, steady pace, a lot of the other things that are priorities for this organization will flow from that. We'll have stable finances. We'll have the dollars to invest critically in infrastructure, in our roads, in our water and sewer systems. We'll be able to spend dollars in parks. People want to be here. So I think foundationally for me, that's really where it starts.
Love that. Thank you very much.
Do you have additional questions or comments for us this evening?
Just one more last quick question that is on my mind. As I go about my daily work, I always wonder, what would you most want your city manager to fiercely protect about Saline's culture?
It's $1 million question. You want to take a stab at that, Mr. Lesh?
I think I'm going to use my get out of jail.
Okay. You want to take a stab at that, Mr. CO?
I would guess just to continue to provide sound government services in the face of all the challenges that we come up against.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
I gotta say that, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it's, fix the damn brown water.
Councilman Gearbaugh?
The thing that I would out of our culture is our sense of community.
Councilman Rice?
The sense of care for our community, both within the building, probably starting within the building, and then outside of the building, because I think, people choose to live here because they care about the community, but you don't have to choose to work here if you don't care about the community. So not breaking that and keeping that spirit inside of this building.
Councilmember Harmel?
The beauty in the culture, and then secondly, transparent decision-making.
I think a number of my colleagues, Mr. Gearbaugh, Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Harmount, either touched on this or made an inference, which is maintaining the character and integrity of this community. It ought to grow. We ought to add new amenities and services that will improve our residents' quality of life. But at its core, this is a small town, a welcoming town, and that's why people move here. That's why people choose to work here. And if we lose that identity, I think it would be to the detriment of the community long term. Do you have anything else for us, Ms. Howell? Ms. Cole?
Thank you so much.
Okay, we appreciate it very much. Thank you. This concludes your interview. Our goal is to discuss these interviews tonight with the goal of either developing consensus and/or making a conditional offer to our selected candidate, and we will be in touch with you very soon.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. What I'd like to do right now is take just like a 5-minute recess to allow people to stretch their legs and use the bathroom, use the restroom if they need to, and we will reconvene at, let's say, 7:26. You just give me that, okay? I'd like to call this meeting back to order at 7:26. As indicated at the top of the meeting, we've reached the point now of seeing if we can develop, consensus and potentially make a conditional offer to one of our three finalists. Before we begin our discussions and I get thoughts from my colleagues, Nate, on the process, but more importantly on the candidates, their qualities, skill sets, and attributes they bring to the table, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I would just reiterate what we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. You know, this is the biggest decision a city council or elected body makes. Whether you're a city council, whether you're an appointed board, this is it. This is why you're here. And as we talked about, this really sets the tone for how you move forward. So I just recommend as you work through the process and you look to identify consensus, try to focus on the merits of the candidates. I would keep it as productive as possible and see where that takes you.
Very good. Well, everyone will have an opportunity to speak, and I'd like to hear everyone's perspective before an motion is entertained, if there's consensus to entertain a motion this evening. So as I indicated before our recess, I'm going to start with Councilmember Lesh. Councilmember Lesh, your comments on the process, but more importantly on the candidates, and are you in a position where you would be comfortable making a conditional offer to one of the three individuals we interviewed this evening?
I would. You know, it was beneficial for me to actually have all three of them sit down because it really showcased strengths of each candidate. You know, being on the initial hiring committee, you know, we had our own metrics or whatever you want to call it there, but you know, having the opportunity to see them side by side actually helped to reinforce my decision on that committee that just because of his length in service, depth of background, diversity in the background, you know, I would be comfortable with offering Mr. Swallows a contract.
Thank you. Councilmember Seal.
I agree with Mr. Lesh. It was most interesting to see all three candidates sit down together and answer the same set of questions. It seems to me that, I guess, cream rises to the top, and I was most impressed with the answers, the completeness with which he answered, and the way that he gave, I thought, sound examples and gave succinct answers to each of our questions. The experience, I think, as Mr. Swallow really shows through, and he would be the person at this juncture that I'd most favor offering a conditional offer to.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. So having had the opportunity to spend an entire day with two of our candidates, and then obviously having the two come back and adding Ms. Cole to it tonight provided a lot of insight, again, as my council colleagues have said, of sort of side by side. What I do see with Ms. Cole is what I see with Ms. Cole. I see her every day. I see the role that she's in. And I see what she's done for our community. She was brought in as our city treasurer, and she was able to immediately embrace that role. And with her skill sets, she optimized Saline's financial position. Then again, when she was given the title of deputy city manager, she immediately embraced the role, and she found aspects within that role, owned those tasks, developed those tasks, went out in the community, developed relationships, and really brought things to fruition that had just been concepts. And then most recently, when we brought her in as our acting city manager, she was able to walk the walk. She's done a lot for this community. There's a lot of things that are going on. There's day-to-day operations. There's big picture things. There's so many things. And she's managed to find the balance. And though she may not have the resume of whatever years of service in the role, she's risen to the role. And for that, I would support her.
Thank you. I actually have a prepared statement, if you'll indulge me. I've been taking notes throughout the day and throughout the duration of our interviews, and I like to read it in its totality. First, I want to thank those of you who attended this evening and to those who are watching online. First, let me acknowledge once again how appreciative I am to our hiring committee and our consultant, Double Hall, for the efforts they put in these past 4 months. As everyone is aware, these processes can be challenging and at times contentious. But those intimately involved with the hiring process conducted themselves with professionalism and the appropriate level of discretion. At no time did I witness or observe anyone conducting themselves, in an inappropriate manner. Further, I'm hopeful that in the future, individuals are not discouraged from serving our city on a hiring committee, task force, working group, or commission. We need good people, in particular private citizens, external from our organization, to continue to serve in local capacities. Their insights and perspectives undoubtedly enrich the decision-making process. Additionally, I want to thank all the business owners, operators, private citizens, and staff members who offered perspective on this process or on individual candidates. Everyone's voice and opinion matters. No one is more or less important than another. As I stated last week, great organizations rally around their leaders. My expectation for council, staff, and our business community and residents is whomever is selected or hired to become our next permanent city manager, that individual be given the confidence and be given your confidence and support. Their success is inextricably linked with our city and broader community's success. Progressive, forward-thinking, and effective organizations also accept the finality of a decision. Once consensus is reached, we must all do our part to ensure a positive outcome. Let me say a few words about our finalists. And truthfully, I don't have a negative word to articulate this evening. The question before us is who is best suited long-term to fit the role as Saline City Manager. All of the individuals we interviewed publicly are highly skilled public servants with distinguished careers in the government sector. Each has accomplished great things during the course of their professional careers, and regardless of the outcome tonight, I am certain that they will continue to do great things for the people that they serve and they represent. As mayor, I have the unique opportunity and ability to become fully immersed in the community, not only to understand the pulse of our city, but also its unseen and seen needs and priorities. I am keenly aware that in a community as large as Saline, with an eclectic and diverse array of opinions, that not everyone will agree with our selection of city manager. But as I said a week ago, foundationally, leadership is grounded in telling people the truth. I'd further add, and I'm quoting Edmund Burke here, I'm sure that'll be the first and last time Edmund Burke is quoted at a city council meeting, your representatives owe you not only their industry, but their judgment. And they betray you instead of serve you when they sacrifice it to your opinion. Ergo, with this in mind, with a deep appreciation and understanding of our community's needs and priorities, cognizant of selecting someone who will be the best long-term fit for our organization, I'm strongly in favor of selecting and making a conditional offer to Mr. Dan Swallow, current city manager of the city of Tecumseh. Mr. Swallow brings experience, acumen, and skills to the table others do not. Specifically, 10 years as a permanent city manager, 5 years as an economic development director, and nearly another 10 as a community development director or in related positions. I believe Mr. Swallow has significant knowledge and exposure to issues involving municipal finance, business attraction, retention, personnel management, community development, planning and zoning, along with code compliance. His resume makes him a standout among the other finalists. I also found him to be approachable, good-natured, and an individual who articulates thoughtful questions and offers keen insights on municipal issues. Finally, I also believe that Mr. Swallows has the emotional intelligence and maturity to effectively lead our organization, resolve conflicts when necessary, build a cohesive team within City Hall, and avoid unnecessary drama or other distractions. I also believe that our organization at this critical juncture would benefit from an external set of eyes reviewing and evaluating our established protocols, policies, and procedures. It is clear to me that Mr. Swallows is the best choice to lead our organization in the ensuing years. Therefore, if a motion is offered to extend Mr. Swallows a conditional offer, I would strongly vote in the affirmative. Thank you very much, and again, I appreciate everyone's support and contributions during this lengthy, albeit critically important process. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Thank you, Mayor. Evaluating all three, I just want to make sure that when I'm looking at them, I'm trying to address the concerns and issues that's facing this city. While I appreciate some of the statement that the mayor made, make it clear, Ms. Cole brought forward in her role as acting city manager a number of concerns and has dealt with them properly. Where my concern runs into is that we slide back into the behavior that was basically acceptable in this community. I need somebody that will be willing to be accountable and deal with the concerns and issues that this city is facing. Whether or not the process will be reviewed is a concern for me, but to have a lecture done right now in terms of what has happened in the community and how this process has moved forward is not suitable, and to have statements made that seem to be attacking other members of our council does not bring forward the statement that you have just made, Mayor. We will work with whoever comes in here. That is our goal. My goal is to make sure when we move forward that we have the most qualified person. We also address the issues that, as you mentioned, long-term. We have long-term issues related to not only financial, but to funding, to all the situations in which this community needs the most expert stability and ability to address those issues and address them honestly and full worth. I am concerned when Dan Swallow makes a statement, well, we don't look at the small mistakes. Well, we've been dealing with a lot of small mistakes and big mistakes for the last few years, and we have to address those concerns. Whether or not this person will make that concern addressed for me would be determined when we actually see them perform. I've seen Ms. Cole perform. I am good with what she has produced. I am consistent with what I've seen, and a number of things that I've been hearing seem to be either an attack on the individual's personal behavior or have been statements made by individuals that do not back up with actual support or evidence when it's actually addressed. Dan Swallow may be 10 years, but I'm looking for someone that has new ideas, that wants to look at something from a different perspective, and really has the ability and communication to work with our communities and our partners. I have seen that happen. I have seen that addressed most frequently. We have a situation where we now no longer have good relationships with the fire department. We don't have good relations with some of our surrounding communities. And those are the things that a city manager must be able to build upon, and if they have proof of doing that. As for Jason Smith, while he is qualified and has addressed things, even for him, one of the things I appreciate was his honesty about their pool, is the issue of I think he does not have the background or the number of years of experience similar to what either Ms. Cole or Dan Swallow has. For me right now, my priority is to make sure that we don't go backwards. We do not go into a situation where we have a city manager that basically listens to the mayor and doesn't listen to the full council. And at this time, I will be supporting Elle Cole.
Councilman Rice?
Thank you. If I could put all three of these final candidates together with maybe a sprinkling of the other two, we'd have the perfect person. But I'm looking at, we have a lot of projects ongoing right now. We have a lot of financial issues from the economic development standpoint. I do think Ms. Cole came in strong and really set us up well as far as our finances go, but now we need to look down the road into the future. I think Mr. Swallow has a fantastic background in economic development that has translated into his time as a community manager or city manager. I think that a lot of the things that were positive for me was his interactions with the townships and understanding that those relationships that are broken can be fixed, and doing the work to do that. Bringing forth information to council that council didn't necessarily agree upon in the beginning, but then continuing to work with council to make sure that what the community wanted was what the community was going to get. And I feel like his story about the nonprofit homeless shelter was, key to those types of relationship buildings between the community and council. I just think he has the experience. The projects that we're dealing with right now and the problems that we're dealing with right now in the city, we don't necessarily have time to allow for, the learning curve of I've never seen this before. Now, granted, there's a huge learning curve when you move from community to community, but I really think that in our next 5 to 10 years, Dan Swallow is kind of the epitome of what we need because of his experience, because of his outlook on some of the challenges that we have in Saline, and I would be willing to put forward my vote for Dan Swallow.
Thank you. Councilmember Harmount.
So we had one of the candidates. So first of all, I wanted to say I really appreciated all the candidates and their time that they took to come in and their experiences that they shared with us. Just wanted to say something. We asked somebody to do the job. They showed up, they were hardworking, they gave good weekly summaries, they came to the table with creative problem solving that include collaboration between stakeholders. Acting City Manager Elle Cole is the person I'm talking about. She identified financial risks and solved them, and again and again. So we're looking at a potential good fit or somebody that's currently doing the job and doing it to all accounts in a really great manner. So I kind of go to the added, you have one bird in the hand versus two in the bush. I have appreciated all the hard work, and I think that when you have creative problem solving and you have good processes and you're able to reflect and improve, and that's another thing. I've worked on subcommittee with her. I've seen her take the feedback. I've personally given her feedback that was maybe a little bit brash and constructive, and I've seen her implement the feedback. And for those reasons, I am going to recommend Acting City Manager Elle Cole as our permanent city manager.
Okay. It appears as though we have, looks like maybe a 4 on one side, 3 on the other. I do have sample motions for each of you to consider, if you wouldn't mind passing one of those down, passing that down. This has been reviewed by the consultant, both April and Nate, along with legal counsel, and the language there mirrors what was used 5 years ago when a conditional employment offer was made to then applicant Colleen Toole. Again, this is not the final step in the process. It would require negotiation, successful completion of a comprehensive background check and drug screening with a subsequent contract to be considered and voted upon at a regular city council meeting. But the chair is happy to entertain any motion that is appropriately worded.
I would move to extend a conditional offer to Dan Swallow for the position of city manager, pending a background check, physical, drug screen, and grant Mayor Morrow, Pro Tem Dillon, and consultant April Lynch authority to negotiate an employment contract, subject to review by the city attorney and approval by city council.
My apologies, Mr. Seal. Before I entertain a second, I'd like to defer to our consultant. Is it appropriate to specify April Lynch specifically, or would you prefer it to be more broad to include your entire firm?
It's either way is fine.
Okay.
April is the one that's been working with you from the beginning. I've taken a lot of notes as far as some of the comments here tonight and things that I know that this council is going to be looking for regardless. Either way, it's going to be fine. We all kind of work as a team, but she's still your point person.
Okay. Everyone clear on the motion that Mr. Seal offered? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to let Rice be the second on that. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of making the conditional offer signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. The motion carries 4-3. Thank you very much. We will be in touch with an update in the very near future. Is there any additional business to be brought before Saline City Council this evening? Please, Mr. Genzer.
If I just want to clarify next steps. Again, every community I've been in has handled this differently. Typically, I'll make phone calls tonight, inform the candidates where we're at, but we never call the search final until we have an approved agreement. So I will make those calls if you'd like. If the mayor or other so sorry, Ms. Dillon, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, excuse me. That's what I was trying to get at. If you guys want to be a part of those phone calls, we can do that as well. But it's going to be short and sweet, kind of just where it's at. And then we'll be in touch as far as how you want to coordinate the contract.
Unless there's objection from the dais, I think you and your colleagues can go ahead and make those phone calls. And then we can be in touch later this week about scheduling a time for Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, myself, you and or April to meet to begin the process of negotiating a contract, which would subsequently have to be reviewed by legal counsel and then brought before city council for approval or rejection.
You get a hand down.
I'm sorry.
I have a question just about the salary. It's the same salary that's current, or is that something that's changing?
It's all subject to negotiation.
Okay, who gets to weigh in on that?
Everybody on council will, yeah. an employment contract, again, as Mr. Genzer indicated, tonight is not the last step. We're moving in a direction of finality, but it involves a successful negotiation by a team in terms of an employment contract, successful completion of background check. All of that information will be shared with council, and a contract would have to be approved at likely a regular meeting, and I would anticipate that, ideally, if things continue on the same trajectory, being done probably in late July.
Mr. Mayor, for the community's benefit, can we talk to the community about the current acting city manager and that she will continue to be the point person until she chooses to leave?
Absolutely. In fact, I sent an email to that effect some time ago to everybody within the organization that the acting city manager will remain in her role for an indefinite period of time until such time as a permanent city manager is in place, that she has my confidence and support, and that I expect all staff members to work cooperatively with her, because we have a number of big ticket items that we need to continue making forward momentum on, and we need the continuity of leadership and her acumen for this finite period of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Gearbaugh.
And to clarify that, Ms. Cole's contract has her going back into either a deputy city manager position or treasurer at this time.
I believe that's correct. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Just to ask Mr. Ginzer if we have a realistic time frame that the mayor just indicated.
So I just want to go on record because it's happened a couple times. It's Mr. Swallow.
I had an S, don't I?
Yeah, and then it's Geinzer, and I get it all the time. It's perfectly fine. As far as realistic timeline, a lot of it's going to depend on the candidate and our ability to coordinate. You know, if we can have something done sooner for your first meeting in July, we can certainly target that. The 21st, I think, is definitely reasonable. Like I said, each community I've been in has been different. It's come together real quick before. I've had other things that have taken a little longer. It's ultimately to Councilmember Harriman's, or Harmon? I'll stop. It's about total compensation. So the salary is just going to be one piece of a larger discussion. And that's what the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem will bring back to this body to review and act on.
So if the candidate is not accepting of the offer that we have from a salary or whatever, then what?
It's going to depend. I've never seen it that way. Very rarely do you have a negotiation that completely falls apart, and that's usually when somebody's not negotiating in good faith. And I don't see that being the issue here.
Or their background check doesn't.
Or the background check, correct. Thank you.
But that would put an immediate kibosh on the negotiation if the individual failed a background or drug screening. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Again, we appreciate everyone's time, patience, and contributions. If there's nothing further to be brought before Saline City Council this evening, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:48. Boy, I'm going to let Harmont be the mover, and I think Rice be the second. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.